This is 𝗚𝗏𝘀𝗃 in Chicago, and you're watching my channel, Knowledge for Quality of Life. Friends, today I'm going to be discussing few thoughts on my wife's APOE genotype 3-4. And last week we discussed about my case study, APOE genotype 3-3. So before I do that, I have a request that if you like my channel and if you think that, the information which I impart here, the knowledge which I share, it's of any help to you, please help me in sharing the information with other folks in your friends and families and extended colleagues so that they can benefit out of it as well. Before I move to the topic, let me share my screen. So what you see here, remember that, when we are talking about APOE genotype 2, 3, or 4, which is single copy, and, double copies, we are focusing on double copies. 3-3 last week, and this time 3-4. Each copy we inherit from our one parent, one from mom, one from dad. So basically, normally I have seen enough vlogs, and have heard doctors saying that whenever they say APOE genotype 4 or 4-4, it triggers that it's a gene which is linked to dementia and Alzheimer's. That is true as well. But it's much more than that. So today I'm going to be discussing some of the areas which I thought that it was very helpful for me in my wife's case, and I'm going to be highlighting those areas as well, so that people know that what APOE genotype 4, either you carry one copy or double copy. So this sheet which you see in front of you is basically a guideline through the literature that what kind of a diet normally APOE genotype 3-4 or 4-4 people should be eating. So if you look at here, first paragraph, it says recommended diet generally focuses on low fat. Now, why low fat? Because remember that we've been talking in the past few vlogs that APOE2, one copy of genotype 2, they have a very slow clearance of fat and dietary cholesterol metabolism. So they don't dissolve their fats and dietary cholesterol as quick as compared to the APOE 3-4 or 4-4. So for folks, who carry genotype 4, they dissolve, they metabolize very fast. It means that there is a tendency that they may increase their blood cholesterol level. So here's the point I want to make a note here, particularly those folks who go on keto. Make sure that before you go on full-blown keto or eat everything, all saturated fats and everything, make sure you know your genotype, because sometimes your cholesterol is going to go through the roof, and some folks said that it doesn't mean that you're going to get heart disease, but when we are talking about illnesses, non-communicable diseases, my focus is overall diseases, including dementia, including Alzheimer's, including heart risk, including insulin resistance, everything. So that's why here, if you see that focuses on low fat, because there is a well-known documented fact that people who carry APOE genotype 4, they metabolize cholesterol and fats, particularly saturated fats, very, very quickly and fast. So before you go on full-blown keto and your doctor says that you need a statin drug, think back, take a step back, or think for a while that did you do recently changes in your diet and that spike your cholesterol? And to verify that, do the APOE genotype testing. And if somehow this genotype testing is not available in your country or place where you are living, then if your cholesterol was okay before and you went on keto, assuming that keto is good, of course, which we hear nowadays, keto is great, but it's not meant for everyone. So you have to be very selective that who you are. As I said in the previous vlogs, that we are all individually different. So I needed to modify here my wife's case because she is 3-4, so I didn't want to go completely full-blown keto, but I would say modified keto. So what is a modified keto? So it restricts you from saturated fat, limits you in saturated fat and dietary cholesterol. So they say that, with emphasis on food rich in omega-3 fatty acids, a lot of salmon, fatty fish like mackerel, sardines, oily fish, they are good for them. It's good for their brain as well because, they have a tendency, because they say that one copy of 4, if somebody carries, there is a probability of getting a dementia about 30%. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to get it because, there are 70% folks who don't get it. Now, it doesn't mean that, folks which are 3-3 has a blank check that, they will not get it at all. It's one factor of your genotype. And then it builds on your underlying conditions as well. So same thing is true with all the types of genotype, but particularly folks who are 4 or 4-3-4 or 4-4, they have a dementia risk of 30% if you carry one copy of 4, or you carry a double copy of 4, the dementia risk goes through 90% probability. So be mindful of that. So, and I highlighted here a few things that, low glycemic load foods, right? Because, remember that, nowadays they are saying that, dementia is a type 3 diabetes. So you have to be very insulin sensitive. Make sure that, you are eating, if you are eating carb, if you're insulin resistant, then you should be avoiding carb. You should be limiting carbs. You have to modify this keto according to your genotype. That's the point I'm trying to make here. So it's basically essentially resembling a Mediterranean diet, but increased, towards the fish items. Monounsaturated fat, polyunsaturated fats are good for them. The only two things they have to be careful of, that dietary cholesterol and the saturated fats. Now, low key components of APOE3-4 genotype, low saturated fat index, which I already mentioned, right? You can take lean protein as in addition to lean protein sources like fish, poultry, beans, etc. Limit your red meat, limit your processed foods. So we are avoiding all those things in my wife's case. Full dairy products, because dairy product means the only thing we consume is whole milk, homemade grass-fed milk yogurt, 2 or 3 tablespoons. That's it. So that's okay. This is a probiotic because it has gone through the fermented process, and I do my own yogurt making for 18 hours normally. And it's a sour yogurt. It means that lactose goes completely to 0. The more fermentation you have, the longer the fermentation is, it becomes more sour. It means that the CFU, colony forming units of the bacteria is present in that fermentation increases tremendously in millions and millions. So bacteria thrives on sugar, so they will chew up all the sugar, all the lactose from the milk, and basically you end up with a sour yogurt. High intake unsaturated fats, so As I said that, we are consuming olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, avocado, nuts, fatty fish, etc. Um, the other things is that, whole grain, if you are insulin sensitive, then I would say that, whole grains, some complex carbs is okay. Vegetables, these are all good stuff. Low glycemic load foods are okay. Low glycemic index, to keep your blood sugar as low as possible, in check. Basically, you don't want to be insulin resistant, because if somebody has a 4, one copy or double copy, then you have a problem to begin with. You don't want to lit the fire much bigger, because you cannot change your genotype, but you can limit your sugar intake, your carb intake, and control that way. Intermittent fasting is the way to go, particularly if you cannot do longer periods of intermittent fasting. 12-3 is 12 hours at least, 3 hours before the bedtime, last meal, and that will give you a decent amount of fasting mode to keep your insulin in check and insulin sensitivity. Antioxidant rich foods, incorporate fruits and vegetables. Of course, when I say fruits, means if you are insulin sensitive, then you can consume fruits. But if you are very concerned about insulin sensitivity, then I would say that pick fruits which are very low in glycemic load. When I say glycemic load, this is a new term. I mentioned before that Harvard University coined this term a few years back. Before, they used to call it glycemic index. Now they said that glycemic index only comprises of part of the sugary content, the sweetness of it. But if the food has the carb component in it, and then that carb converts into glucose, that is also added. You can say that added damage. So pick the fruits or foods which are low glycemic index load. So what they do that they take the glycemic index, multiply by the amount of carbohydrates present in that food. So the lower the carbs, and then lower the glycemic index. That's the way to go if you want to become a more insulin sensitive. Particularly people who are on the borderline, or their parameters are out of the whack. Blood work, particularly your insulin, your HbA1c and all that, then you have to be very careful. So here, basically, especially specific food choices, the one which I highlighted here, leafy green vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, bell peppers, spinach, Brussels sprouts, berries, kiwis. This is all we consume at our home, because I'll share in the next sheet that where she is standing. That's why I modified this. That's why I say that it's a sort of a modified keto. It's not completely full-blown keto, but it's a modified keto. Just like I've been doing modified keto, and I'm not a carnivore. I'm not a meat eater, but I'm a modified keto person. So the important thing to consider is limit alcohol intake. A lot of people said that the alcohol is limiting consumption of alcohol is good for you, increasing the HDL, which is true. To some extent, it increases your HDL, but at the same time, you don't want to have a bad impact if you carry this genotype. Because as I said, that genotype we cannot change it. We got what we got, from our parents. So that's why we are not consuming any form of alcohol in our house. I never tasted alcohol in my life. No one has, including me and my wife. So regular physical activity is very, very critically important for APOE4 folks. As a matter of fact, physical activity is good for everyone. So let me go to the next sheet. So now this is the main crux of her case. So she was vitamin D. She was at the highest in our family of five at 35. If you recall, that 30 to 100 is the range. She was just at the mark of 35, and currently, of course, this is not optimum by any standard, and I make sure that she's around 65 and 70, but with all the cofactors and everything, she's hovering around 85. The reason was, when she was 35, she had severe seasonal allergies. When she immigrated here, nothing happened for about 15, 20 years. And this is common with a lot of folks. And I was vividly researching literature that, what is causing it. So particularly in a spring season and the fall season, when this pollen and ragweed, from the trees, she would start sneezing and runny eyes, and that sneezing will turn into a hay fever, and then eventually it will turn into a sinus infection, and then sometimes she would end up in eating the antibiotic. But for antihistamines, she was taking, at one point, I remember, three, actually, Clarinex, Claritin, and Allegra. And sometimes, few years using it, and body got immune to it, that it was not responding. So finally, I found some literature that talks about seasonal rhinosinusitis, and vitamin D and C did quite a bit dramatic improvement for seasonal rhinosinusitis. And she was there in 2017 above 60, and then I incorporated C as well, 1,000 milligrams, and she's been doing so well since then. She would sneeze, but that sneezing doesn't mean anything now, and she has not taken any antihistamine or any type of meds for her seasonal allergies since 2017. At one point in 22, when doing our annual lab work, her TSH started creeping up a little bit. So she got 4.84. Prior to that, it was close to 4. So I was a little bit concerned here that she was getting close to the upper threshold, and we spoke to the doctor, and of course, the doctor would say that no, nothing to worry about, because if it's full-blown hypothyroidism, then they will, of course, prescribe the Synthroid. So I digged it up a little bit literature, and there are two things popped up in front of me: iodine optimization and selenium. So we made sure that I added one Brazilian nut in her daily intake. One can take 1 to 2, but in Brazilian nut has selenium. About medium-sized Brazilian nut has about 95% 95 microgram of selenium. So you don't need more than that, because if you have too much selenium, it could be a toxic. So you cannot just gobble Brazilian nut. Be mindful of that. Otherwise, you can have a side effects. And then we need to make sure that iodine is a decent amount of iodine level in our blood. And the TSH started coming down to 3. And after doctor ran another 6 months lab work for TSH, and it came down. So since then, she's taking that, and we've been using iodized sea salt in-house, as I mentioned before. I was concerned, doctor was not concerned, but last time I got her insulin checked as well, because her fasting blood glucose was 78 and her HbA1c 5.5, both are normal, but I wanted to see how her fasting insulin is doing. So we got insulin tested. She came 4.9, and I ran some numbers, and you see that if you look at this thing, these two, first and second number, she was perfect, right? Ideal. But her HOMA-IR was still good, but if you compare my HOMA-IR last time, I was 0.74. So I'm much more insulin sensitive than her. So both are okay. This is okay too, but her C-peptide came okay too. And I needed to find out that C-peptide is okay. Our pancreas is doing well. She was also low in B3 and B5. So as I mentioned in my case, we've been eating 3 ounces of organic chicken liver, each serving twice a week. Now the main thing is in her case is osteopenia. So over the years, we've been running DEXA over time, every 3 years, and her osteopenia was getting close to osteoporosis. At one point, it's below 2.5 negative T-score. So, and I looked up, she's a petite female, so, DEXA is not very, very good in capturing the data for petite female. The results can be skewed, of course. And there was a new test available recently in the Chicagoland area. So I did it. It's called Ecolite REMS. And it gives you a fragility index as well. So that came very good. Of course, the T-score is still negative, but her bones are, because, she's petite. So basically, petite females is going to have a, mass per unit volume of the bone is not going to be that much as compared to the heavy built women. So the main idea is that, bones needs to be, decent fragility. It shouldn't be in a way that, if God forbid somebody falls down, then you can have a fracture. So we ran this REMS test, and her fragility index came a lot better than what we thought could be. So that was a good news. And since then, we optimized D, making sure that she's getting through the food 1,200 grams of calcium, milligrams of calcium, and bone strength natural supplement, and make sure that we are getting in 3 servings throughout the day, 1.2 grams of protein per kg weight of her body weight. So that translates in you can spread it out in 3 meals the way you want, because bone matrix is 50% of the protein collagen. So you have to have enough protein in your system, because this is not like one thing. And remember that when we were going through this testing year over year, I was not happy. So we went to the endocrinologist, and she ran each and every test to find out that why she's having a osteopenia, and they could not find anything. All her testing, advanced level testing, came positive. Negative. No issues. They cannot pinpoint any particular source. And finally, she said, the doctor said that it could be a secondary reason. When they don't have any answer, they can say that it's a secondary reason. So, and they were pushing for the Prolia and Fosamax and all these drugs, which we try to avoid as much as possible. So we did this lifestyle modification, which I'm sharing here. So she added exercise over time, fast-paced walking, moderate impact weights, elastic bands for strength. The one major breakthrough we just got, a year before, that when we found out that she was APOE 3/4, and we were taking 100 microgram, both of us, and I came okay in my blood level, because we did the extensive testing of micronutrients, and they did test our vitamin K2 status as well. At that point, I figured out the puzzle that where the excess calcium is going. Now remember that if you don't have enough vitamin K2 in your blood at the cellular level, she was okay at the serum level, blood level, but she was not. By the time it was reaching at the cellular level, her body would clear it out. So I told in the previous vlogs that vitamin K2 clearance depends on the genotype you carry. The folks which carry 3-4 or 4-4 clear very fast. So they need more, frequently and more dose than 3-3 or the other APOE genotype 2-3 or 2-2. So we increase her vitamin K2, from 100 microgram to 800 microgram, including natto, 2 tablespoons, and because of this issue that she clears pretty fast. So she's been doing very good, and no issue at all by increasing the dosage, because there's no established dose yet. I would tell you one thing with very caution, that folks who are 2-2 or 2-3, they have to be very careful in consuming vitamin K2 MK7, because MK4 has a shorter half-life of about 4 hours, and it will clear from your system quick. So because APOE genotype 2 folks, they clear K2 very slow. So if they take MK7 form, it's going to give them the backup issue, and they can have a palpitation, they can have many things. So they don't jive very well with this form MK7. So be mindful of that. Or if you want to take it, you don't have to take it daily, because you can take every other 2 days or every other day, depending on how you do well, because you need enough time to clear before you take another dose. That's the whole idea for APOE genotype 2 people. So the entire thing here, the premise I'm trying to explain here is that we are all different, and it goes really to the detail that what are we trying to do here, is that we have to dial in our own system to understand that who we are and how we can manipulate and maneuver things so that it's to our advantage. Her coronary calcium score was 0, so no worries here. But again, her carotid Doppler, no stenosis, no issue. So she, as I said, that APOE 3-4 and 4-4 both has these 2 risks, cardiovascular and dementia. So from cardiovascular front, she is okay. She is completely low risk in a risk category. But again, I'm concerned about dementia and Alzheimer's in later part of the life. So we are limiting her, carb intake, only complex carbs, no processed foods, limit saturated fat, limit dietary cholesterol, because she is 3-4. Let me stop share. So I tried to explain here in the previous week's my vlog, these 2 things, these 2 case studies of our individual case studies, because we are all different, as I said. So make sure that, before you go on full blow keto and become a carnivore, and your LDL goes through the roof, and if you go to see a doctor or a cardiologist and they will recommend you a statin drug, make sure that you are not APOE 3-4 or 4-4. Give yourself a chance to correct it by limiting or avoiding the saturated fat and dietary cholesterol from your diet, and go for modified keto, because I think that sometimes we do things unintentionally in the good sense, but it comes and haunts us. So I hope that you will take some good pointers from this vlog, and if you have any particular question or comment, please include in the comment section, and I'll try to respond. See you next week.